streetcar I take every morning was rerouted that Tuesday because of construction on King Street, and that small inconvenience is the only reason any of this happened. I want to be clear about that from the start. I didn't go looking for her. I wasn't the kind of guy who struck up conversations with strangers or believed in the idea that the universe nudges you toward people. I was a guy who left his condo at 7:40, caught the same streetcar, drank the same medium double-double from the same Tim Hortons near the office, and thought about nothing more profound than whether I'd remembered to send the deck before the 9 o'clock. But this streetcar was rerouted, and the detour dropped me 3 blocks east of where I usually got off, in a part of Leslieville I never had reason to walk through. It was March, that ugly Toronto March where the snow has turned gray and the wind off the lake gets into your collar no matter how you button it. I had 20 minutes to kill and cold hands, so I ducked into the first place with a lit window. A narrow cafe called Foundry with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu and the smell of something baking that wasn't quite bread. It was quiet inside. A few people with laptops, a guy reading an actual paper book, the hiss of the milk steamer. I got in line behind 2 other people and did what I always do, which is look at my phone so I don't have to look at anything else. And then I had that feeling. You know the one. The back of your neck telling you that you're being looked at. I glanced up. She was ahead of me in line, turned halfway around, and she was already looking right at me. Dark hair pulled back, a gray wool coat, a scarf she hadn't bothered to take off, brown eyes that didn't do the thing people's eyes usually do when you catch them. They didn't dart away. They didn't pretend to be searching for a friend behind me. She just held it, calm, like she'd been waiting for me to look up and was mildly satisfied that I finally had. I looked away first. I was annoyed at myself for it before I'd even finished doing it. The line moved. She stepped up to order, and I heard her voice for the first time, low and even, no wasted motion in it. Large Americano, room for milk. She paid, moved to the side, and I stepped up and ordered a black coffee. And then, with absolutely no plan and no idea why, I heard myself say, and whatever she ordered. I tipped my head toward her. The barista, a kid with a faded green apron, glanced over. The Americano? Yeah. He rang it through. I tapped my card before the part of my brain in charge of dignity could catch up. I am not, and have never been, a guy who buys coffee for strangers. I don't make moves. I don't have lines. My whole personality is built around not being noticed, around being competent and quiet and forgettable in a good way. But there I was, standing off to the side of a cafe in Leslieville, waiting for a coffee I'd bought for a woman who hadn't asked me to. When her Americano came up, I picked it up and held it out to her. She looked at the cup, then at me. Is that mine? She said. It wasn't really a question. It is now. I didn't ask you to buy me a coffee. I know. That's sort of the whole thing with buying someone a coffee. The corner of her mouth moved, not quite a smile, more like she was deciding whether I was worth one. So what's the angle? I didn't have an angle. That was the problem. She looked like someone who could spot a rehearsed line from across a parking lot, and I had nothing rehearsed. You looked at me like you knew something I didn't, I said. I wanted to find out what it was. She studied me for a second longer than was comfortable. That doesn't make any sense. No, I agreed. And you said it anyway. I did. That got the smile. Small, brief, gone almost immediately, but real. She took the cup from my hand. Thanks for the coffee, she said. And she walked to a small table by the window, set down her things, opened a laptop, and acted like none of it had happened. I left feeling about 10 feet tall and like the biggest idiot in the city at the same time. I got half a block down Queen before I realized I'd left my work bag tucked under the counter where I'd been standing. I swore, turned around, and pushed back through the door. The bag was there, so was she. Sitting at the window, coffee beside her, watching me come back in like she'd expected it. Not surprised, just watching. I grabbed my bag, gave her a small nod because my brain had stopped supplying words, and she lifted her cup an inch in acknowledgement and went back to her screen. That should have been the whole story. A weird, nice thing that happened on a Tuesday. Except the next morning, the streetcar was running its normal route again, and I got off at my normal stop, and then I kept walking. 3 extra blocks east in the cold, to a cafe I'd been inside exactly once. I told myself the coffee was better there. It wasn't, particularly. It was fine. It was not worth 11 extra minutes of a Toronto march, but I went. She wasn't there. I went the next day, not there. By Thursday, I felt like a genuine idiot standing in line at a café I had no business being loyal to, ordering a black coffee I didn't even want, scanning the window table and hating that it was empty. I didn't know her name. I knew she drank Americanos with room for milk, and that she looked at people like she'd already read ahead to the end of their chapter. That was the entire sum of what I knew. Friday, I almost didn't go. I went anyway. She was there. Same table, same gray coat over the back of the chair, laptop open, Americano beside it. And when I walked in, she looked up immediately, like she'd been keeping half an eye on the door. I ordered slower than I needed to, trying to work out whether walking over made me look confident or desperate. And by the time my coffee was ready, I still hadn't decided, so I walked over anyway. This is going to sound like a line, I said. She looked up. Is it a good line? Probably not. And sit down, she said, half closing the laptop. Let's see how bad it is. I sat, and immediately became aware of my hands, my coffee, my coat, every part of me that didn't know what to do with itself. She leaned back. You came back, she said. I like the coffee. You don't. I laughed because there was no point lying to her. It's fine coffee. You came back Wednesday and Thursday too. I stopped with my cup halfway up. She took a slow sip of her Americano and watched me over the rim of it. How do you know that? I said. The smile came back, small and very pleased with itself. I'll tell you later. She didn't tell me later. That was the first thing I learned about her, that when she said later she meant on her schedule, not mine. I sat there with my coffee going cold between my hands, having just been caught coming back 3 separate times for a woman whose name I still didn't have. Do I at least get a name? I said. Or is that also later? She considered it. Renata. She said it like it was a fact she was choosing to share rather than one she owed me. Renata Voss. It fit her. Some names sound dramatic on the person wearing them. On her it just sounded like something printed on the front of a building. I told her my name and she repeated it once, quietly, like she was filing it somewhere. What do you do? She asked. Logistics. Supply chain mostly. I figure out how to get things from where they are to where they need to be without losing money in between. That sounds like a job people describe differently depending on who's in the room. I laughed. That's painfully accurate. So describe it like you don't care whether I'm impressed. That was Renata in a sentence. No warm-up, no soft landing. I told her the truth, which was that I was good at finding the place in a system where money quietly leaked out and plugging it, and that most of my job was convincing people who didn't want to change anything that they needed to change one specific thing. She seemed to like that, not because she smiled, but because she stopped looking like she was waiting to correct me. She told me she ran a small architecture firm. 6 people, her name on the door, built from nothing, no family money, no partner who'd fronted the lease. She said it the way someone reports the weather, flat and factual, but I heard the weight underneath it. How long did that take? I asked. Long enough that I don't romanticize the early years anymore. That made me look at her differently. Not the way you look at someone you're attracted to, though I was. The way you look at someone you've just realized is more solid than you assume. After that, the table became a thing we both pretended was an accident. I'd come in around 8. She was almost always there first, at the window, laptop open, Americano beside her. The first few mornings she kept working when I sat down. Then one morning, without a word about it, she closed the laptop the second I reached the chair. I noticed. She saw me notice. Don't make that face, she said. What face? The one where you decide something means something. It did kind of mean something. It means my inbox is annoying me less than usual, she said. Don't build a cathedral out of it. But she kept doing it. Every morning, the laptop closed when I sat down. It built slowly, not like a movie. No grand speeches, no hands suddenly reaching across the table. Just coffee and dry little observations and the kind of quiet that stopped feeling like it needed filling. She remembered things. A supplier meeting I dreaded. A contract I thought was a mistake, but had to defend in front of my VP anyway. The fact that I hated cinnamon in coffee but would eat a cinnamon bun the size of my head, which she informed me was structurally inconsistent behavior. I learned things too. She liked drawings more than renderings because a drawing admitted it was a guess and a rendering pretended to be a promise. She blocked her calendar and colors. She didn't answer her phone before 9 unless a building was actively coming apart, and even then she said she'd prefer a text. She'd grown up in Hamilton, the kind of childhood where you learn early that money is a thing that can simply run out. One morning I admitted that work had started to feel strange. Strange how, she said. Like I'm good at it, and that might be the problem. She waited, so I kept going. I know how to do it. I know what people want to hear in the meeting. I know which lever to pull. But lately it feels like I'm just moving boxes around a board, and I can't remember why the board matters. She stirred her Americano even though she'd already stirred it. The answer's probably already in you, she said. You just don't like it yet. That's an irritating thing to say. I know, it's also too accurate for someone who's known you 3 weeks. Maybe you're not as hard to read as you think you are. That should have bothered me more than it did. Instead, I found I wanted her to keep reading. By the second Friday, it didn't feel like luck anymore. It felt like a plan neither of us had said out loud. That morning, she came in later than usual, hair damp from the freezing rain that had started overnight, looking irritated in a contained, polished way. Bad morning, I said. Guess a thing tonight. That sounds harmless. It's not. She sat, pulled out the laptop, didn't open it. Industry mixer. Developers, planners, the city people who decide whether your project lives or dies. Everyone pretending they're not keeping score. Sounds awful. It's useful, which makes it worse. I drank my coffee and then surprised myself again, the way I kept doing around her. I could come with you. She looked up. Why? Because I'm good at standing in rooms full of people pretending to enjoy themselves. It's basically my entire job. That's your pitch. It's an honest pitch. You realize it's not your industry. I move things from where they are to where they need to be, I said. Everyone in that room is trying to do the same thing with their careers. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, wear something dark, and opened her laptop, and that was that. The mixer was in a converted warehouse in the distillery district, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs and small plates of food that cost more than they should have. Renata moved through it like she'd mapped every exit before arriving. She wore a dark green dress under her coat, simple and sharp, and for a second when she took the coat off at the door, I forgot the normal way to say hello to a person. She caught it, of course. Don't get weird. I was already a little weird before I got here. Then keep it manageable. I gave her room at first. She talked to people with that contained focus of hers, never rushed, never too eager. But somehow we kept ending up back in each other's orbit. A guy cornered her near the bar and held forth about adaptive reuse for what felt like a geological age, and I stepped in with a question that turned him toward me, and she slipped away without seeming to move quickly at all. 10 minutes later, she materialized beside me while I was trapped by a woman explaining her concept for a members-only co-working club for, and I quote, founders who garden. They need you over here, Renata said, nodding toward absolutely no one. I excused myself instantly. You saved me, I said. She'd gotten to the part about the heritage tomatoes. You owe me. I do, she said, yes. Later we ended up in a quieter corner near a window, the party still moving around us, and somehow the space between the two of us narrowed until the rest of the room felt like it was happening on a screen somewhere else. You're better at this than you said, she told me. So are you. I never said I was bad at it. I said I didn't want to come. Those aren't the same thing. No, I said, they're not. I said her name then, just Renata, quiet, and whatever I'd been about to say after it left my head completely. There was no clever follow-up waiting. No safe joke. Her expression changed first. Just slightly. Just enough. We should go, she said. The Uber back to her place was quiet but not awkward. Our knees touched once when the car turned off Front Street and neither of us moved away. Outside her building the rain had stopped and left the sidewalk shining under the streetlights. She stood by the door with her keys in her hand. Do you want to come up? She said. No edge to it this time. No test, just the question. Yeah, I said. She held my eyes for one more second, then unlocked the door, and when I followed her inside it didn't feel sudden. It felt like all those quiet mornings had finally arrived at the same answer. The next morning should have been strange. I expected the awkwardness, the careful smiles, one of us pretending to be more relaxed than we were. But Renata was already in the kitchen when I came out, barefoot on the cold floor, wearing a white shirt that I was fairly sure was the one I'd been wearing the night before, which did something to me I wasn't prepared for. "Coffee," she said like I'd slept there 100 times. "You make it sound official." "It's coffee. It should be official." She poured mine black without asking, and that small thing, that she'd remembered, landed harder than it had any right to. We sat at her kitchen table and talked about nothing for a while. The terrible playlist at the mixer, the adaptive reuse guy, the woman with the gardening founders. Renata actually laughed once, a real one, not the controlled almost smile from the café, and it surprised her so much she stopped it halfway out. When I got up to leave, she walked me to the door. I was already assembling some careful sentence, something that wouldn't sound like I was asking for reassurance, when she said, "Same time Monday." I looked at her, at Foundry. "Unless you found better coffee." "I haven't." "Then same time." So I believed her. Monday morning I got to Foundry at 8. Her table was empty. I told myself she was running late. I ordered my coffee, sat, answered a couple of emails, and watched the door open and close on other people. She never came. Tuesday, the same. Wednesday, I nearly went back to my normal Tim Hortons just to prove to myself that I could, and still ended up at Foundry, standing in line like a man losing an argument. No one else knew what was happening. Her chair stayed empty. By then I'd started replaying all of it. The Uber, her door, the kitchen, same time Monday. I wondered if I'd misread the whole night or if she'd meant it when she said it and changed her mind after. With her, both seemed entirely possible. Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. No hello, no explanation. Just an address on Ossington and the time. 7:30. I looked at it for longer than I'd like to admit. Then I wrote back, "Okay." The place on Ossington was quiet and expensive in the way where nothing on the walls is trying too hard. Renata was already there, at a corner table with a glass of water in front of her, hair tucked behind one ear, composed, not comfortable. "Hi," she said. "Hi." I sat down across from her. For the first time since I'd met her, the quiet between us didn't feel easy. She picked up the menu, closed it without reading it. "I handled this badly," she said. That surprised me. I'd expected a clean explanation, some controlled excuse, not that. "You disappeared," I said. "I know." "After same time Monday." "I know." The server came and we ordered food neither of us cared about. When he left, Renata put both hands flat on the table, like she needed something solid under them. "I'm used to controlling my life," she said. "My work, my schedule, who I let in. Everything has a place. And I didn't have a place." "No," she looked at me directly, "you didn't." I wanted to stay angry. I'd earned it. But there was something in her face I hadn't seen before. Not fear exactly, more like someone standing one step too close to a long drop. "My dad ran a contracting business," she said. "When I was a kid, he trusted people too easily, signed things he hadn't read carefully, thought a handshake was a contract. We lost the house when I was 14. We lost most of it." She said it flatly, but her fingers pressed white against the table. "So you decided never to be careless," I said. "I decided careless was a thing other people could afford. That sat between us and stayed there. So I told her things too, more than I'd planned, about work feeling hollow, about being praised for ideas I didn't care about anymore, about how easy it is to keep performing competence long after you stopped wanting the life that's attached to it." She listened without interrupting once, and at one point she reached across the table and put her hand over mine, just for a second, then pulled it back like the honesty of it had startled her. By the time we stepped outside, the night felt almost repaired. Almost. We stood near the curb, restaurant light behind us, the odd car hissing past on the wet street. I was about to ask where we went from here when she looked at me and said, "Before you answer anything, there's something else I need to tell you." My stomach tightened before I knew why. "What?" She drew in a slow breath. "And here's where I'll stop and ask you, because I still don't know the answer myself. Was I right to feel betrayed when I found out what she told me next? Or does it still count as real, all of it, because she chose to tell me at all? Tell me in the comments. I've gone back and forth 100 times. That first morning at Foundry, she said, it wasn't random. For a second I thought I'd misheard her. What does that mean? I knew who you were before you walked in. The street noise seemed to drop away. What? Your firm came up as a possible logistics partner for a development my office is consulting on. The Carlaw site. I looked you up. Your work, a couple of panel talks you did, your LinkedIn. Enough to get a sense of your routine. My routine. There's a transit alert account I follow for the East End. It flagged the King Street reroute that Tuesday. I knew your usual stop would be skipped. Foundry was the closest decent café to where you'd actually get off. She said it evenly, but she was watching me carefully now. So I was there. The table, the line. I made sure I was ahead of you. The whole café rearranged itself in my head, her looking at me before I'd seen her. The fact that she hadn't seemed surprised when I came back for my bag. The way she'd known I'd come in on Wednesday and Thursday. You positioned yourself there, I said. Yes. The look, the line, the coffee. The coffee was yours, she said quietly. I didn't plan the coffee. That part was you. I laughed once, with no humor in it at all. That's the part you want to clarify. I'm not defending it, but yes, you bought the coffee. I didn't make you do that. You set up everything around it so that I would. She didn't answer that, which was its own answer. Everything shifted at once. What had felt like the most spontaneous thing I'd ever done now had wires running behind it, a whole structure I hadn't known was there. So the firm, I said, the Carlaw thing, is that what this is? Are you trying to get a better rate out of me, or? No, it came out fast. The first thing she'd said all night without choosing it first. No. I told my partner 2 weeks ago I didn't want your firm on the project. Conflict of interest. I took us out of the running specifically, so this wouldn't be about that. She pressed her lips together. I planned the meeting. I did not plan to want the mornings. I didn't plan to close my laptop when you sat down. I didn't plan for the mixer to be easier because you were in the room. I didn't plan you. That's supposed to make it better. No, it's just true. I looked down the street because looking at her had become too much. I need a couple of days, I said. She nodded once, no argument, no attempt to pull me back. You should take them. A cab came and I got into it before I could change my mind. Through the back window, I saw her still on the curb, straight and still under the restaurant light, getting smaller. And as the car pulled away, I genuinely couldn't tell which part hurt more, that she'd engineered the beginning, or that everything after it still felt completely real. For 2 days, I did all the normal things you do when your head isn't actually in the room. I went to work. I answered emails. I sat through a planning meeting where my director asked what I thought about a carrier change, and I gave an answer solid enough that no one noticed I'd barely heard the question. I bought a sandwich at lunch and ate half of it without tasting it. And the whole time I kept going back to Foundry in my head, not the version I wanted, the real one. She'd known I might walk in. She'd picked that table. She'd watched the door. She'd let me believe the first look was chance when it was the opposite of chance. That mattered. I didn't want to be the guy who waved it off just because a woman looked at me like she could see the actual inside of me. I didn't want to dress it up as fate when the truth was that the first move had been made before I knew I was even on the board. But I kept remembering the rest of it too. The mornings after that first one, the one she couldn't have scripted because nobody scripts 3 weeks of someone slowly closing a laptop a little faster each day. The dry comments she saved up for me. The way she listened when I talked about work, not like she was collecting intel, but like she actually wanted to know where the true thing was hiding under all of it. The mixer. Her laugh in the kitchen that surprised her so much she'd stopped it. Her outside the restaurant, telling me the truth when she could have just buried it forever. That was the part that wouldn't leave me alone. She could have said nothing. I would never have known. I'd have gone on believing the story was cleaner than it was. Instead, she told me at the exact moment it stood to cost her everything, and she did it without a single attempt to soften it or talk me out of how I'd feel. I thought about my own track record too, if I'm honest. The relationships I'd let quietly die because staying would have meant actually saying what I wanted out loud. I'd spent years being careful in the other direction, never reaching, never positioning, never wanting anything badly enough to risk looking like I wanted it. And here was someone who'd wanted something badly enough to build a whole careful plan to get within arm's reach of it, and the thing she wanted, it turned out, was a conversation with me. I'm not saying that made it fine. It didn't. But it complicated the clean anger I'd been trying to hold on to. Late Saturday afternoon I called her. She answered on the second ring. "Hi," she said. "Careful, not cold. Careful." "Meet me at Foundry," I said. "1 hour?" A small pause. "Okay." When I got there, she was already at the window table. No laptop, no notebook, no phone in her hand. Just Renata, sitting still in front of an Americano, looking less prepared than I'd ever seen her. I ordered my coffee and walked over and sat down, and she didn't say anything, just waited. "For once," I said, "you built the first moment. You knew where to stand. You knew I might come in. You watched me like it was all just happening. And when I came back, you let me think the mystery was real." She held my eyes. "Yes. That hurt. I know. No, I need you to actually hear it. It made me question everything that came after. Every morning. Whether any of it was you, or whether it was all just management." Her face tightened, but she didn't defend herself. She didn't explain or correct or soften it. "I hear it," she said. I looked down at my coffee, then back up at her. "But the rest of it felt different," I said. "The mornings, the conversations, the mixer, you telling me the truth when you absolutely did not have to. I've turned it over 100 times, and I can't make those parts into a strategy. They don't fit." Her hands were folded by her cup, and her fingers moved once, like she'd thought about reaching across the table and stopped herself. "I should have told you sooner," she said. "Yes." I was scared. That wasn't a word I'd expected from Renata Voss, not because I thought she never felt it, but because I thought she'd sooner walk through a January storm without a coat than say it out loud. "Scared of what?" I said. "Of wrecking the one thing in my life that had stopped feeling managed." She looked at her coffee. "Everything I have, I built by controlling it. And then there was this table, and for an hour every morning I wasn't controlling anything. I was just here, with you. I didn't know how to keep that and tell you the truth at the same time, so I kept the truth back. And then I panicked and disappeared, which was worse. That got me." I leaned back and let the noise of the cafe fill the space for a minute. Cups clattering behind the counter, somebody laughing near the door. Outside, people walking past the window with no idea that, for me, the entire thing had narrowed down to this one small table again. "If this keeps going," I said, "honesty has to matter more than control. You don't get to position me. You don't get to decide what I'm allowed to know because it makes your plan cleaner. It won't be like that. I mean it. I know you do, and I'm not asking you to pretend you're fine with what happened. I'm not fine with it. I wouldn't believe you if you said you were." That almost got a smile out of me. Almost. Renata reached into her coat pocket and took out a small folded square of paper. She slid it across the table. "What's this?" I said. "Something I wrote before you got here, before I knew what you'd say." I unfolded it. 4 words, in small, dark, careful handwriting. Nothing arranged this time. I read it twice. Then I folded it back up along its creases and put it in my jacket pocket, next to nothing, where I'd know exactly where it was. "We start from here," I said. "No planning, no positioning, no version of the story you've decided I get to see." She nodded, and for the first time since I'd met her, her smile came all the way through. Not measured, not controlled, not stopped halfway out of surprise, just there. Changing her whole face. We sat at the same table where the fake coincidence had started. Same window, same coffee, same 2 chairs, the gray March light coming in flat over the laptop she hadn't brought. But this time I knew exactly why I was sitting there, and so did she, and not one single part of it had been arranged. I've thought a lot about why I almost walked away from Renata that night on Ossington, and the truth is it had nothing to do with her and everything to do with me. For years I'd built a quiet life around never wanting anything visibly. I let relationships die rather than say out loud that I'd like them to continue. I called it being easygoing. It was really just fear wearing a nicer coat. And then a streetcar got rerouted, and a woman I'd never met handed me a version of myself I didn't recognize. the one who buys a coffee for a stranger and means it. What stays with me is that the part I was angriest about, the planning, the positioning, the table by the window, came from the exact same place as the part I couldn't let go of. Renata built that first morning because she'd learned young, watching her dad lose the house, that the world doesn't hand you what you want, you arrange your way toward it. That instinct kept her firm alive. It also nearly cost her the one thing she couldn't control by force: cause and effect. The same strength that made her formidable made her almost impossible to be honest with. And she knew it, and she told me anyway. That choice mattered more to me than the deception did, because anybody can keep a secret that protects them. It takes something rarer to give up the secret at the precise moment it can only hurt you. I keep coming back to that as the real lesson, the one I'd want my own kid to understand someday. Doing the right thing is hardest exactly when it costs you, and that's the only time it actually counts. Renata could have stayed silent and kept me. She chose the harder, truer thing instead, and that's the kind of integrity you can build a life on top of. But integrity on its own wasn't enough. It took her clear-eyed honesty about why she'd done it, the willingness to look at her own pattern and name it instead of dressing it up, to make the apology real. And it took plain, stubborn courage for both of us, her to confess, me to come back. Neither of us guaranteed anything on the other side of it. I don't think you get the good version of a life by being careful. I think you get it by being decent when it's expensive, by being honest about your own machinery even when it's unflattering, and by being willing to walk back into the cold cafe one more time when everything in you says protect yourself and leave. Renata taught me that without ever meaning to teach me anything. We still get our coffee at the same window, and every so often I think about how close I came to letting the most real thing in my life slip past me just because it had arrived with a plan attached.